Hello there. Welcome to whatever we're calling this show. So, have we decided what we're calling this yet?
Yeah, we've come up with the name SiDEQuest.
SideQuest. I dig it. So here we are again with, one person who wishes to know more of the lore and one person who knows of said lore. So, what questions do you have for me?
Well, we know that there's a couple different contexts of the game. There's been books that were written early on when the game came out. Razor, for those of you who may not know, came out with the whole keyboard, mouse, and mouse pad, and I forget. Anyhow, came out with items directly for Star Wars: The Old Republic. There is a comic book series in, I believe, the 90s that spoke to the game, or I guess that must have been 2000. Spoke to the game and
the game only came out in 2010. What or 2011?
Right.
What do you? Are you asking about tie-in media to SWTOR?
Well, I'm just kind of mentioning some things that'll lead me into this first question.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go on.
And so, in fact, why don't I ask you instead of trying to guess myself? Some Raptor, when did the comic book series, as it relates to the game, when was that published?
A tie-in comic to the. There are several comics that tie in. Are you asking about stuff that ties in terms of storylines? I mean, there's the old Knights of the Old Republic comics by John Jackson Miller, while obviously linking more to the Knights of the Old Republic game rather than the SWTOR MMO. There's stuff here and there that there's references like for example, the main Republic space station, Carrick Station, is named after the protagonist of said comic. There's.
Could you give us a little background about him?
Oh, sure. Zane Carrick. He's a very interesting, very unique character. There's a comedic aspect to him in that he's not the most adept at using the Force. He's a Jedi. Not to give spoilers for the whole story, but he's let me put it this way: he's framed, has to clear his name during the Mandalorian Wars is when his story takes place. And if I may quote John Jackson Miller, said author, he said, "We've been accustomed in the past to seeing the best of the best when it comes to the Jedi, the ones who blew the curve for the other kids. Zane is the other kid." So
excellent.
He's very, very unique. One of my favorite characters, I would say, because I very much like that aspect of looking into 90% of the time we're focusing on the exceptional people, but I like having looks at, be it common folk or, well, I guess what people would call quote unquote failures, but I don't know, I just really like that.
Well, it's my belief every person has a story, and it's an awesome story, and it should be shared. Unfortunately, I think we tend to have a situation here in America where it's not. There's a difference between tooting your own horn and being arrogant, and then tooting your own horn and speaking about you and yourself and your journey. And I think we need to do more of that. I think that's one of the things I like about Star Wars is that the environment is so rich, and you do get these different characters. For example, Jar Jar Binks, which is a loaded question, and we won't go into it. he's sitting on the fence. The dichotomy between the people who like him and the people who don't like him is severe and strong, and yet the founder of the whole process, George Lucas, he's said to have loved them or does love them. So I love that. I love seeing these characters, and I love learning about them. And I loved the Boba Fett series. A lot of people didn't like it, but I ate it up. I thought that it was a good introduction and great way of telling his story. To get back on track, though, we see there's several different types of armor that are dropping in the game now, and some of it makes, I guess, more game sense, if you will. But then I was mentioning to you that there's this Thessian armor that's dropping, and I remember you being surprised at it, and I just was curious, what is this? What role does that play in either the game or in Star Wars lore?
Oh, Thirsian. Ah, yes.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah. So, yes. What I was surprised about was in the lore, the Thirsians much later on in the timeline have this sort of oh boy, this is one of those things where like you start rambling. It's like, oh well, to explain this, I need to first explain this. First, need to explain this. Long story short, the Thirsians are a culture related to the Achani, if you know those, who eventually create a group called the Sun Guard, which actually come to rival the Mandalorians in their effectiveness as mercenaries and whatnot. And the interesting thing about them, they become the basis for I should say there's multiple influences, but they become the basis for the Imperial Guard, as in the red dudes guarding Palpatine and Return of the Jedi and whatnot. Of course, other lore says, oh well, there was influence from Mandalorian stuff. Oh, and then the prequels came out, and it's it was they came from the Senate Guards and so on and so forth. But then SWTOR comes out. No, the old Sith Emperor also had red guards like that. It's like, well, okay, but yes, no, I to answer your question more directly, I did. Yes, I liked them bringing in the Thirsians, even though I'm not sure timeline-wise they were supposed to have shown up. Well, no, I mean, so long as it's not called Sun Guard armor, it's no, that's still more friendly.
Okay. And just so you have it correct, it's Thirsian armor.
Thyrsian. Thirsian.
Thirsian armor. Okay. Well, and then to wrap up this session, we wanted to share a little bit more information about the Yusong Vong and their role that they played. Either they were not in the game, but they do play a significant role in Star Wars lore to the tune of 365 trillion people dying at their hands. So what else does... We've talked about their genetics and weapons. They're organic based. They hate technology. Their armor, some of them, their armor was so strong it could defeat a direct hit from a lightsaber. What else comes to mind that would be interesting to know about them?
Sure. In regards to the Vong, maybe I'll give some out-of-universe knowledge. So last time I talked about how the editorial at Del Rey wanted a very different threat, but where they got their name from is a funny story. So apparently, basically, when they were formulating all this, they were at a Thai restaurant where, and Asian restaurants often have overlapping stuff from varying countries, so not just Thai, for example. So there was a tea from the Yunnan region of China, and so they were like, hey, wait, we can call these the Yunnan Vong, which became Yuzhan Vong. Where Vong comes from, people don't know. But besides that, I believe from an in-universe perspective, though, Yuzhan means like divine. Vong is like children, I think. They're again very religious, caste-oriented. So they're the children of Yun Yuzhan. Yun Yuzhan was their sorry, Yuzhan Tar. Wait, now I'm confusing my terminology. But besides that, there in terms of real world inspirations, yes, there was, so named after Yunnan, which is, I believe, in southern China, where I also believe they filmed some of the sequences from Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith. Oh wait, no, that would have been coastal, so probably near like maybe Guangxi. Anyway, I'm rambling. What I'm saying is, besides that, in terms of real world influences, as I was mentioning with the strict caste system, you know, most people would think of ancient India. Well, I say ancient. It's only been like a century since it was abolished, but there were actually more along the lines of Aztec and Maya, Mesoamerican influences in terms of their sacrifices and everything to do with scarification and blood, in terms of that whole fun shebang. You know, wholesome fun for the whole family. I believe Huitzilopochtli was the influence for Yun Yuzhan, one of their... I need to read more on their pantheon.
Well, on a side note, it's an interesting thing to me that when people have plastic surgery, only because from my viewpoint, I've had 33 major and minor operations.
Oh, jeez.
And 5 artificial joints, which have left me horribly scarred. And it's a big ego hit for me to think that somebody would actually do it on purpose, for the purpose of worship. I do believe there's a sect in the Catholic Church that does the same thing, that whip themselves and scar themselves in honor of God.
Yeah,
so
I mean, in terms
it's
of
an interesting perspective.
Life, I go back and forth on what's on you know, being accepting of everything in other cultures, but then there's some practices that are like, as long as you don't hurt anyone else, fine. But sometimes it's like, well, you gotta be, I guess, relativistic in some sense. Like, if you look up the article among the Nasi Rema, I think the joke is that it's American backwards. It's like talking about, it's like, okay, so they, you know, people will ritually add paste to their it's a fun thing, but we're getting off topic, and we might want to wrap this up, I guess.
Yeah, you can include that last little bit or not, but I think we've got the show for this week.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you for watching, and may the force be with you always.